Israel Vision Review, a biblical commentary based on the IBA news broadcast and other local sources. In the headlines today, will the three-day presidential conference achieve its objectives as leaders from around the world convene in Jerusalem? And what about the future of Prime Minister Ehud Olmert? Is this current police investigation into him and questioning concerning donations to his political campaign leading to his resignation? If so, who could replace him? And amidst a continual barrage of fatal rockets and mortar fire from Gaza, will an Egyptian peace initiative result in a truce? And what are the chances of a wealthy Russian philanthropist, Arkady Gaidamak, in becoming the mayor of Jerusalem? Be sure to stay tuned for what the Bible says on these issues and for key prayer points that can directly involve you in Israel's future as you pray the news.
Good evening and welcome to IBA News, coming to you from Jerusalem.
After 2 months of quiet in the coastal town of Ashkelon, 2 Grad missiles struck the city. One of the rockets landed next to a residential building, causing one woman to go into shock. The second rocket landed inside the Ashkelon National Park and failed to cause any property damage, but did create a large crater in the compound.
Egyptian intelligence chief Omar Suleiman is in Israel today for a lightning visit in which he is presenting to government leaders the draft ceasefire agreement he reached with Palestinian terror groups in Gaza. For details, we go over to IBA's diplomatic correspondent, Leah Zinder. Leah?
Yes, hi Laura, hi John. Omar Suleiman did say earlier today that he has high expectations that a deal can be struck, but so far, no deal. Now, the draft ceasefire agreement that was reached by Suleiman and Hamas, and including the other terror factions, includes a 6-month mutual ceasefire, but a host of key difficult issues remain to be worked out, and these were discussed today with Suleiman by Prime Minister Olmert, Defense Minister Barak, Foreign Minister Livni, and Eli Yishai. Now, these are Israel's conditions for the ceasefire as presented to Suleiman by Prime Minister Olmert: a total cessation of all rocket fire and terror attacks from Gaza, a stop to arms smuggling into Gaza, freedom for the IDF to act freely in the West Bank, and Gilad Shalit must be included in any ceasefire deal. Now, I asked one senior Israeli official, does the word include mean the release of Gilad Shalit? And he replied, I chose my words very carefully. Now, early in the day, Ofer Dekel, the chief negotiator for Shalit's release, and Shalit's own father, Noam, both urged Olmert to make the release of the kidnapped soldier a condition of the ceasefire agreement. Dekel said in a letter, if we don't do that, it's tantamount to giving up on Gilad Shalit. Hamas officials were quick to say today that Shalit will not be a part of the agreement. That could be just an opening gambit. In any case, Defense Minister Barak had a clear threat for Hamas when he told Suleiman that Israel cannot and will not go on exercising restraint, and if the attacks and the arms smuggling don't stop, Israel will have to operate in Gaza in a much more extensive manner. So finally, what happens now? Prime Minister Olmert will present the deal to the Security Cabinet next week. Suleiman will present it to Hamas, and after that, Prime Minister Olmert will travel to Egypt to deliver Israel's reply personally to President Hosni Mubarak. Back to you in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Leah. Leah Zinder from our Tel Aviv studio. Well, we have more now on the Prime Minister's latest criminal investigation. According to a poll in the Yediot Achronot newspaper, 59% of the Israeli public believes Prime Minister Ehud Olmert should resign over suspicions that he illegally received hundreds of thousands of dollars from American Jewish businessman Morris Talansky. The poll also found that 60% of Israelis do not believe the Prime Minister's claim that he never took bribes. According to a Haaretz report today, the case is currently focused on Olmert's tenure as Minister of Industry and Trade in the Sharon government, and not, as Olmert claims, on his Jerusalem mayoral campaigns, meaning there was no apparent justification for collecting campaign funds. Israeli law broadly prohibits political donations of more than a few $100s. Talansky told Channel 10 last night that he did not know what Olmert was doing with the money, and he was not aware that donating it was illegal.
Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said today that in the last 3 years, 3 centers have been opened for treating women who have suffered sexual abuse. Olmert appeared at a session of the Knesset Committee for the Advancement of Women, which convened to discuss 2 programs: treatment for women who have been sexually abused and treatment for prostitutes who are part of a human trafficking ring. IBA's Eli Wagalanter was at the committee meeting and asked MK Gidon Sar whether the Prime Minister's problems are affecting the workings of the government, like these social programs.
I believe it is extremely affecting, but I don't think it affects these two projects, because these two projects are on track and professional people are working on it, and I don't think there is an influence. But when we are talking about the big issues, political, economical, and social big issues, I don't think that when the Prime Minister is under 5 investigations, he can really fulfill all these important missions.
A chase after a thief ended in tragedy for a policeman this afternoon in Rishon LeZion. The incident began when an attempted robbery was reported and an officer was dispatched to the scene. He pursued the suspect to the roof of the building, which was 7 stories high. The policeman slipped through a glass guardrail and fell to his death. German Chancellor Angela Merkel shares the political ideals of Adolf Hitler. That's the view of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, who also lashed out at the German leader's political party, the Christian Democratic Union, calling it the same right wing that supported Hitler and fascism. Chavez was on the verge of flinging more insults at Merkel, but suddenly stopped short, saying, "Miss Chancellor, you can go too," then added, "Because you're a lady, I won't say any more." Chavez's comments were apparently prompted by reports that Merkel urged some Latin American leaders to avoid forging ties with the Venezuelan government. In 2006, Chavez called U.S. President George W. Bush the devil.
Israelis got their first look at an electric car that developers expect will revolutionize transportation in the country and serve as a model for the rest of the world. IBA's Sheila Zucker has more on this innovation.
It looks like a normal car, drives like a normal car, but it's an Israeli innovation. A fully electric car that Israel hopes will revolutionize the way people use vehicles. Backers of the project, led by Israeli-American high-tech wunderkind entrepreneur Shai Agassi, aim to put Israel at the forefront of green motoring. The first demonstration took place in a Tel Aviv parking lot. The car looked like a regular sedan, but minus an exhaust pipe. There was an electric socket where the mouth of the gas tank should have been, and the trunk was filled with heavy batteries.
This entire element replaces the engine and everything that supports the engine in a normal car.
The venture between Renault Nissan and Project Better Place hopes to introduce the car into the country's roads in large numbers by 2010.
All we have to do is put it in drive and go.
Hundreds of electric cars are scheduled to hit the country's streets in a pilot run next year. And if the company's plans proceed on schedule, Israel will be the first country to have electric cars on its highways in large numbers. This is Sheila Zucker for IBA News.
Back to diplomatic issues, and we're pleased to welcome the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. and co-chairman of Nefesh B'Nefesh, Danny Ayalon. Ambassador Ayalon, thanks for coming in this evening.
Pleasure to be here.
Is it, in your view, Israel's best interest to agree to a truce with Hamas?
Well, I don't think so. Because the truth with Hamas will, first of all, legitimize them, legitimize their, let's say, control over the Gaza, and most of all, it will give them some very long lead time to rearm, to reorganize, and at will, whenever they find fit or beneficially in their interest, to attack again.
But not forging a ceasefire with Hamas means continued warfare, continued missile attacks on the south, and something which Israel apparently has no answer for.
Yeah, so there are many ways, in between to do it. Certainly the Egyptian intervention is very important, and I believe with the right amount of pressure from the Egyptian, from other parties in the Arab world, and also from the Israelis on the ground, Hamas, which is in no way in really a position to really dictate terms, I think they can take something which is lesser than a ceasefire, with understanding that they will not fire any rockets, and at the same time we can really block in a much more effective way all the ins and outs to the Gaza Strip, mainly to control or to avert any incoming of explosives, of terrorists, know-how and things like that.
But where does a lack of a ceasefire leave captured IDF soldier Gilad Shalit?
Well, this should be on a different track, and the Palestinians and the Hamas is very much interested in their prisoners that we have. So I think we should be able to separate the issue on the ground from the issue of the prisoners, and certainly I would agree to release as many as we can in order to get back Shalit.
Looking at Lebanon, Hezbollah has emerged much stronger from the Second Lebanon War, and it appears poised to take over the entire country, if not now, then in the not-too-distant future. Is that a scenario that we can expect with Gaza if we do agree to some sort of ceasefire?
I think that this is certainly not inconceivable that that would be the scenario that we see in Gaza as well, yes. It goes back to the Lebanon War in 2006, and I think here, not that we lost the war, but we certainly lost an opportunity to deal Hezbollah such a blow which will no longer keep them as a dominant force politically and militarily in Lebanon. So now we really see the results of this unsuccessful war.
Ambassador Eichel, let's turn to the upcoming visit by U.S. President George W. Bush. He's expected to arrive in Israel in the coming days. We've already heard that there won't be any three-way summit between Bush, Olmert, and Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader. If we add this to Olmert's legal problems, does this mean that the whole Bush visit is a purely ceremonial one?
Absolutely, and it was meant to be ceremonial. And actually, as an Israeli, I'm proud and glad that it is ceremonial. In a way, this is a very unique visit. It's the first time that we see an American president come to Israel to a visit which dedicated only to the relationship, celebrates the solidarity, the friendship, the natural alliance that we have with the United States, irrespective of the surroundings and the regional status. It was very much tempting, I can tell you, by American officials and others to have a three-way meeting here with Abu Mazen as well. But the president avoided that, and we did too, and I think this is the right way to do it. I mean, we celebrate the relationship, and I think this is the strongest message to foe and friend alike, that the U.S. is continued to support Israel in ever stronger ways, and unfortunately the geostrategic situation in the Middle East is such, and the developments are such, that we do need to reiterate and strengthen these relations on a bilateral basis only.
Ambassador Danny Ayalon, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Well, turning abroad now, and Lebanon continues to hang between fears of all-out civil war and hopes of political compromise. Troops from the Lebanese army began deploying in the mountain areas north of Beirut following fierce clashes yesterday between forces allied with Hezbollah and pro-government Druze militias. Druze leader Walid Jumblat initiated a ceasefire when he called on his Druze opponents in the mountains to mediate an agreement to hand over the region to the Lebanese army. However, dozens were killed in the fighting before the ceasefire went into effect. In Beirut, shops and banks began opening, and many locals emerged from their homes following the bloody confrontations in the city earlier in the week.
Arab League ministers are urging the warring Lebanese factions to lay down their weapons. Foreign ministers in the body have decided to send a delegation to broker a settlement between the Hezbollah-led opposition and the U.S.-backed Lebanese government. Yesterday, the Arab League issued a statement criticizing Hezbollah for the violence. Syria, which currently holds the Arab League presidency, did not send its foreign minister to that meeting. Back here at home, Morris Talansky, the central figure in the new investigation against Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, served as the New York fundraiser for the New Jerusalem Foundation, which was founded by Olmert during his years as mayor of Jerusalem. The former director of that foundation is Tzvi Raviv, who joins us now in the studio. Thank you for joining us, Tzvi.
Thank you.
Is this a bribery scandal or an attempt to depose the Prime Minister?
First of all, Morris Talansky was not a fundraiser on behalf of the New Jerusalem Foundation. Morris Talansky was a volunteer in the New Jerusalem Foundation. He did not raise funds for the New Jerusalem Foundation, and the New Jerusalem Foundation is totally transparent and has never transferred one single cent to any political or any other cause except the causes for which the money was contributed
So
to.
why do you suppose the name of the New Jerusalem Foundation is being mentioned in the whole investigation?
Because unfortunately, instead of conducting a silent investigation, whoever investigated decided to put a curfew on news and a curfew on the investigation, and this curfew created a situation that everybody has a theory. And because everybody has a theory, suddenly the foundation finds itself in the middle of a turmoil that does not hold any water, because the foundation had absolutely no connection to anything that pertains to the investigation at the moment.
No connection between the funding for the New Jerusalem Foundation and Olmert's mayoral campaign whatsoever?
Absolutely not. We keep the Israeli law, and the American Foundation keeps the American law, and we keep it. And listen, a year and a half ago, before I left office, the NGO registrar came and did a 6-month investigation into every single check that came in, every single expense that came out, every single project that we did. It has nothing to do with it. It's just a figment of the imagination. We have a very imaginary people, the journalists, etc. So we imagine a lot, but it has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Have you been in touch with Mr. Talansky since the scandal emerged?
Yes. First of all, I had coffee with him 2 days before the scandal emerged. I had coffee with him. He told me about the fact that he has 2 grandchildren here, that he has 2 children here, and one of his granddaughters is getting married on the 11th of June, and the other one on the 15th of July.
He had no premonition whatsoever this was going to occur?
Absolutely not, because as far as he told me, he did not feel at all that he broke the law, either in the United States or in Israel. Again, the situation of a bribe is a figment of the imagination of somebody. It's taking things out of context and building all kinds of towers in the air that have totally no substance.
Okay, it's Tzvi Raviv, former director of the New Jerusalem Foundation. We hope to have you on more in the near future when more of the details become apparent and when the case unfolds, and we appreciate you coming in today.
Well, I personally hope that the case will unfold and the discovery of things will be done, and people will be able to run the country as the country should be run. And it's about time at the 60th anniversary of the State of Israel that we should be able to run the country. We have too many problems in order to be able to deal with small little things and all kinds of conspiracy theories.
Tzvi Raviv, thanks very much for coming in again.
Thank you.
Well, on to other news, and the first International Writers' Festival opened last night in Jerusalem. President Shimon Peres helped inaugurate the 4-day festival in Jerusalem's scenic Mishkanot Sha'ananim neighborhood. 17 authors from around the world are participating, along with over 30 Israeli authors and translators. The writers include Nobel Prize laureate Nadine Gordimer of South Africa, American Jewish writers Anita Diamond, husband and wife team Jonathan Safran Foer and Nicole Krauss, and Nathan Englander. Krauss offered high praise for Israeli novelist David Grossman, calling him one of her heroes.
David Grossman is one of my heroes. I think in English the title is Sea Under Love. I think that book probably changed my life as a writer, gave me a sense of what was possible, of how to stretch the limits and take risks and put tremendous energy into one's work.
I think of it as a book festival that's in Israel rather than an Israeli book festival. Obviously, as a Jewish person, maybe it's not obvious, but books have held a special place in my life.
Facing Tomorrow, that's the title of the President's Conference that opens tomorrow, bringing together 13 heads of states, including policy planners and prominent thinkers of the Jewish people. U.S. President George Bush, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and media mogul Rupert Murdoch are among the VIPs taking part in the $21 million fest. Joining us now to discuss the conference is Dr. Yehuda Mirsky, a one-time official in the Clinton administration and now a fellow at the Jewish People Policy Planning Institute. Dr. Mirsky, thanks for coming in this evening.
Thanks for having me.
It's billed as an unflinching discussion on a spectrum of issues of vital importance to, of course, the Middle East and the entire world. That's quite a claim. Why is this conference different from any other conference we've had so far?
Well, the world is full of conferences. I can tell you what we're trying to do with this one. I come to it because I'm a fellow in something called the Jewish People Policy Planning Institute, which is the professional body tasked by President Peres with putting this thing together, and much of the substantive work of this conference comes out of work that this institute has done in recent years to try to think in long-term policy planning terms about a range of issues facing Israel and the Jewish people. The idea behind the conference is that here Israel is marking its 60th anniversary, and of course there's a range of celebrations and commemorations of all different sorts, and here let's try something where we gather together the best possible group that we can find and who are available of, as you said, thinkers, diplomats, policymakers, philanthropists, activists, young people, communal leaders, etc., to try to think together for several days in about the present day trends that are shaping Israel, the Jewish people, and the world community of which Israel and the Jewish people are a part, and try to think what ideas we can generate to help move along the positive trends that we see, and to generate connections between people who ordinarily would not be gathering together under the same roof, as well as connections of ideas.
What are some of the top issues that you'll be trying to tackle during the conference, which we may not have thought of?
Well, first of all, the conference is highlighting obviously a lot of geopolitical issues. Henry Kissinger is going to be there, and sort of looking at geopolitical issues, again, both as they affect Israel and the Middle East, but not only. We'll be talking about the rise of China. We'll be talking about the concept of Jewish civilization. How does Judaism as a civilization fit in a larger historical trajectory of the rise or potential decline of other civilizations? We're talking a lot about entrepreneurship and how to encourage innovation. Shai Agassi, whom you profiled earlier in your broadcast, is one of many people of that sort. We're going to be dealing a lot with cultivating leadership, as well as just trying to gather together people who ordinarily wouldn't be sitting on the same panel to think together about issues like Jewish culture, Jewish education, income gaps in Israeli society, as well as how to further the positive trends in innovation or other elements, other dimensions of Israeli society.
We only have about 20 seconds left, so briefly, at the end of the discussions, presumably there'll be some operative recommendations for change. Will there be any follow-up?
One can only hope. Obviously our institute, the Jewish People Policy Planning Institute, has taken as its mandate to try and move along sustained, disciplined discussions and also working on concrete ways of operationalizing all the ideas that people bring out with all their energy and creativity.
We, of course, will be covering the conference over the next few days.
Glad to hear it.
Dr. Yehuda Mirsky, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
Turning to the arts, preparations are in an advanced stage for this weekend's Jacob's Ladder Music Festival. This is the 32nd annual event, which thousands of Anglo-Israelis and a growing number of native folk music fans are expected to attend. The festival takes place at Ginosar Beach on the Sea of Galilee. This year, for the first time, it's a 3-day happening, kicking off on Thursday night. Jacob's Ladder is a unique musical and social event for lovers of the eclectic musical offerings, ranging from folk to bluegrass to Irish jigs, country rock, and blues. We're watching the Abram Brothers Band, who arrived from Canada and is one of the many foreign performers who will be participating this year.
Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, great weekend.
Well, we're turning to finance now, and shares were up slightly on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, while the shekel strengthened against all major foreign currencies. We're looking at the late afternoon numbers.
A slight drop in temperatures tomorrow, but just for the day. Wednesday, it's expected to warm up again. You're looking at the highs and lows for the next 24 hours.
That's all for today. We'll be back tomorrow at this same time on this same channel.
Until then, thanks for watching, and shalom from Jerusalem.
We open today's biblical commentary on current news events in Israel with this scriptural statement: there's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 9:1-9. It's yet another conference and another round of discussions, this time hosted by Israeli President Shimon Peres. In fact, it's President George W. Bush's second visit to the Holy Land in just 4 months. There are 14,000 police officers who will man the streets of Jerusalem, making sure the U.S. president and his entourage are safe. He, along with other world leaders, scientists, intellectuals, writers, philosophers, inventors, entrepreneurs, and young people of exceptional promise, are here to forge new relationships, to think, and to try to come up with new ideas on how to face the future. And if you think about it, the future is frightening for the average person. In fact, Professor Yehezkel Dror, one of the conference hosts, suggests that most contemporary leaders today are simply inadequate. They're just not up to the job, he says. In the past, the damage that a mediocre leader could do was not as potentially dangerous as what they can do today when facing nuclear and biological weapons of mass destruction that can instantly erase much of humanity. The constantly expanding poverty and growing starvation as well, and lack of potable water. Dror says that Israel today needs a leader who combines the best sides of Abraham Lincoln and Charles de Gaulle. Quite a combination. Leaders today are subject to the influence of money as never before. And in Israel, for example, we have corrupted leaders with 3 members of Knesset in jail, a former president on charges of abusing women, and a current prime minister accused of taking his bribes, and his vice prime minister also having been charged with taking advantage of a young female soldier. It is shocking indeed, and the media has played its part in muckraking and increasing the distrust of the public in any form of democratic government, and causing potentially serious and qualified people are running away from political life at all costs, it seems. A present poll in Israel indicates that Tzipi Livni, the current foreign minister, could replace Ehud Olmert as leader of the Kadima party if Olmert steps down. The poll indicates that she would be favored to win an election against the challenger, the Likud party led by Benjamin Netanyahu. But don't hold your breath. Ehud Olmert has ridden out other storms, and likely he'll survive once again until the next election in November '09. Israel's patience is wearing very thin in the face of continual barrage of deadly rocket and mortar attacks on the southern part of the country. Egypt is pushing for a truce, called a Hudna, because their chief negotiator, Omar Suleiman, sees the window of opportunity growing narrower and narrower with each passing day, and each Israeli fatality as well. The prophet Jeremiah said, "We looked for peace, but no good came, and for a time of health, and there was trouble. For behold, I will send you serpents among you, vipers, which cannot be charmed, and they will bite you, says the Lord." That's found in Jeremiah 8:15 and 17. And what are the chances of Arkady Gardamak becoming the mayor of Jerusalem? He has the money to stage a huge campaign, and he's won in the favor of the average person in Israel following his provision of holidays in Eilat for thousands of beleaguered citizens of Sderot who had to sustain the deadly rocket attacks day in and day out. Now, his actions have indirectly criticized the government's lack of action for people in a war situation in the Negev region around the Gaza area for the past several years. His chances to become the mayor of Jerusalem, however, are very, very slim, I believe, simply because the city's incumbent mayor, Uri Lipulyansky, is Orthodox, and the religious population of the Holy City make up more than 25% of the local inhabitants in Jerusalem. Finally, I must mention that President Bush will be escorted to the Israel Museum for a private visit to view the most complete Dead Sea Scroll ever found, just on display right now. 2 major sections of the great Isaiah scroll features the prophet's celebrated message of peace, where it says, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares." That's found in Isaiah 2:4. This scroll dates back to approximately 120 BC, and it is one of the first of 7 scrolls discovered in 1947 in a cave near Qumran on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea. The book of Isaiah has been completely preserved by Israel as a treasure for all of mankind. Is this kind of dedication not part of what has made this tiny nation of Israel not only different, but great? Now here's some prayer points for you to consider. Please pray, number one, for the President's conference to seriously address character qualities of today's leaders. Secondly, pray for the Israeli people living in political crisis and threats of war on a daily basis. Pray also for the residents that are under daily attack from terrorists. And thank you for praying regularly for the peace of Jerusalem on this program. And let's pray for the God of the ancient biblical schools to be praised and worshiped. Now, these are just some of the prayer points that I thought were important, and we ask you to please be in touch with us. We look forward to hearing from you. Your comments are very, very valuable to us. So until next time, this is Jay Rawlings reporting to you from Jerusalem. Shalom and God bless.